Alda, who plays Hawkeye on MASH, sometimes writes and sometimes directs, but he is always the show's star. MASH has been one of the most popular TV shows for more than 50 years. It mixes dark comedy with raw feeling against a war background. From 1972 to 1983, the show made millions of people laugh and cry, but something else was going on behind the scenes. We will always remember Alan Alda as Hawkeye Pierce, and now at age 89, he has broken his quiet. Fans are still shocked by what he said. There were fights, nervous breakdowns, power battles, and one moment that almost ended the show. This is not the familiar mix you have in mind. Behind the camera, this is the truth. After 50 years of silence, they were finally found out. The early days and things getting worse. It was meant to be a team effort when MASH began in 1972. Alan Alda, Wayne Rogers and Malin Stevenson were all supposed to be equal stars in the 4177th Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. They were all supposed to have important parts to play. The show took place during the Korean War and was based on a movie from 1970. It had funny parts as well as serious ones about friendship and war. During the first 3 seasons, Alan Alda, Wayne Rogers and Malin Stevenson got along great with each other. But as Alda's part became more popular, it made it harder for them to keep their characters equal status. The players who were happy at first slowly turned into something more complicated. At first everyone got along great. All of them were thrilled to be a part of something fresh and new. At the time, the show was different from everything else on TV. It had funny things to say about important things like war, death and friendship. The players were aware that they were making something important. Things began to change though as the show got more famous. Hawkeye Pierce, played by Alan Alda, became a fan favorite. People liked his short jokes, how loving he was, and how sure he was about what was right and wrong. He started getting more lines and scenes that were more important. Some of the other players didn't like this. It got lonely for Wayne Rogers, who played Trapper John, and Malin Stevenson, who played Colonel Blake. They agreed to work together because they thought they would be big stars. Now though, Alan seemed to be becoming the main figure. The stress wasn't just about who would get to see who. It was also about getting paid and being known. Alan started making more money as he became more well-known. Being able to write and direct shows gave him even more power over the show. Things were getting worse though, and soon there would be big changes in the group because of them. At the end of the 3rd season, there was the first big change. Colonel Henry Blake, who was played by Malin Stevenson, quit because he was tired of the part. He thought Alan Alda was getting all the attention and that his character wasn't getting enough notice. People were shocked by how Malan's exit was handled. They didn't just move his character to a different base, they chose to kill him off. Colonel Blake's plane was shot down on his way home from Korea in one of the most powerful TV shows ever. People were shocked when they heard the news at the end of the show. A lot of fans didn't know that the other players didn't find out about Blake's death until they were filmed the scene. You can really see the shock and tears on their faces. Alan Alda later said that this was one of the worst times in the history of the show. Wayne Rogers didn't like how things were going either. He thought that more Hawkeye stories were taking up space that should have been given to his character, Trapper John. Wayne also chose to leave at the end of the 4th season. Trapper John, unlike Malan's character, was just moved, so Hawkeye and his friends never got to say goodbye to him. The loss of these 2 important characters could have ended the show, but Alan Alda and the writers were able to add new characters and tell new tales. Crow's new best friend and roommate, B.J. Honeyotter, played by Mike Frell, joined. Colonel Potter's new superior officer was Harry Morgan. In many ways, these changes made the show better. The new characters gave the show new life and different kinds of fun, but Alan Alda was now clearly the star of the show. But not everyone liked these changes, and some cast members still didn't like how Alan was becoming more powerful. The case of Gary Boff. Alan Alda and Gary Berghoff, who played the sweet and innocent Radar O'Reilly, had one of the worst relationships on the MASH set. Gary Berghoff also said that he was going through a divorce at the time. He said that juggling his personal life with his busy work routine was hard, and he had problems with some cast members. People thought he was hard to work with and tough to get along with. Being in both the movie and the TV show MASH made Gary one of the few stars who could say that. He felt like he had a special bond with the character and the story because of this. But Gary got harder to work with as the show went on. It wasn't just personality differences that caused trouble. During the show's run, Gary was going through a messy divorce, which made him stressed out and sometimes angry on set. He was often late or didn't know what to say. This made the other players angry, especially Alan, who was known for being very prepared and professional. Gary also thought that his role wasn't being taken seriously. Radar was meant to be a big part of the show, but it seemed like he got less and less important scenes as time went on. Gary thought this was because Alan and the writers were writing too much about the doctors and not enough about the other people in the story. Alan and Gary were so angry with each other that they could hardly be in the same room. Some group members saw what was going on and tried to help, but nothing worked. Behind Alan's back, Gary would often say bad things about him, like that he was too dominant and didn't care about what other people thought. During the 7th season, things really heated up. Gary was unhappy, and it showed in his work. It was getting old for the other actors and the team to deal with him. Gary finally made up his mind to leave the show. He was written off as Radar in a moving episode where he had to go home and take care of his family farm. Many people on the set were glad when Gary Berghoff left, but it also showed how hard it could be to work with Alda when you didn't agree on something creative. Alda became more than just an actor on MASH as the show went on. He began to write episodes, direct them, and have a say in big artistic choices. At the time, this wasn't common for TV actors, but Alan's knowledge and love for the show impressed the people who made it. Lots of people remember the shows that Alan wrote for the show. He really cared about what the show should be about and how it should deal with important things like death, war, and friendship. He didn't just want MASH to be a joke. It was his hope that it would make people think about important things. This freedom to be creative put Alan at odds with other actors and writers sometimes. A few people thought he was trying to make the show more about Alda than about the other people in it. They were afraid that his serious attitude was taking away from what made MASH fun and funny. This strain was shown in a famous way in the episode Preventative Medicine. In Season 7, Episode 22, Frel and Alda had a fight over what their characters should do in the script, which caused stress behind the scenes. There was a colonel in the show who kept putting his men in dangerous situations where they were hurt or killed. Hawkeye and BJ had to decide if they should operate on the colonel against his will to keep him from fighting and protect his men's lives. It didn't seem like BJ, played by Mike Frel, would agree with this idea. There was no stress at all, even though Mike didn't want BJ to go along with the plan after the table reading. He and Alan argued about it for a few minutes, and we all agreed right then that this argument would be great for the play. With Preventative Medicine, what could have been a big fight between the players turned out to be a good thing. They chose to make their real argument part of the story. Alan and Mike had a real-life fight about what was right and wrong, and so did Hawkeye and BJ in the episode. This shows that Alan got better at dealing with differences in ideas as the show went on. He learned to listen to other people's ideas and find ways to make them work for the show instead of just telling them what to do. But Alan's impact wasn't always seen positively by everyone, and some cast members had a hard time with the changes it made to the way the show worked. The ties to the family. An interesting thing about Alda's time on MASH was how he brought his own family into the show. Alda hasn't hid the fact that his relationship with his father was less than ideal at times. The two of them had a strange feud. He wrote and directed Lend a Hand so that he could work with his dad again, and Robert came up with the idea that the two surgeons should work together during the show. His dad, Robert Alda, was also an actor. He was well known in the 1940s and 1950s, but by the time MASH came out, his work had slowed down. There were problems between Alan and his father. Even though they loved each other, they were in competition with each other at work. Both men felt sad during the event. They had to deal with their personal problems while working together for the company. It did well both as a TV show and as family therapy. Robert Alda did a great job, and the episode became one of the most moving in the whole series. Along with his family, Alan brought other people into the show. Arlene, his wife, played nurses or other small parts in a number of shows. His kids had small roles every once in a while. Alan did this to share his success with his family and stay close to them while he worked long hours on the show. Some cast and crew members didn't always like it when Alan brought his family to work. Some people thought it was unfair and not professional, but most people knew that Alan was trying to work and spend time with his family, which is hard to do when you're on a hit TV show. Having family ties brought another level of complexity to the complicated relationships on the MASH set. Even though there were a lot of problems and issues on MASH, Alda did make some real friends that will last. The best one was with Mike Frel, who played BJ Honeyett on the show in the 4th season. Some things about Mike and Alan's characters and political and life views were the same. Each of them really cared about social problems and wished to use their fame to make the world a better place. Making a difference was something that pulled them together on and off the screen. It wasn't always easy for them to be friends. They had different thoughts on what the show should be about and how their characters should act. But they learned to value each other's ideas and work together to make something better than either of them could have done on their own. This friendship went on for a long time after MASH finished. Mike and Alan stayed close friends and continued to work together on different projects. They've been seen together at MASH reunions and events in the past few years, which shows that their friendship is still strong. Alan was also friendly with a number of other group members. Loretta, who played Major Holohan, was always helpful and efficient, even when things were tough. Jaime Farre, who played Klinger, kept things fun and funny on set. William Christopher, who played Father Malky, was nice to everyone. Some of the most important people in Alan's life became friends that he made on MASH. After 11 seasons and 251 episodes, the show finished in 1983. These people were no longer just co-workers. They were related. These long-lasting friendships would become even more important for Alan as he faced new problems in his personal life. After MASH, there is life. Alan Alda could have quit his job and lived off of his fame when MASH ended in 1983. He was rich and popular because of the show, and people wanted to hire him to be in more TV shows and movies. Alan wasn't ready to quit though. He had more things to say and more people to play. It was a good run for Alan in movies and plays after that. He wrote and directed a number of movies such as Sweet Liberty and The Four Seasons. He also kept acting in other people's movies, usually as smart and funny figures that were a lot like Hawkeye Pierce. Alan never forgot about MASH or the people he worked with on it though. Many of the people who used to be on the show kept in touch with him, and he was always happy to talk about it in conversations. He was proud of MASH because he knew it was the most important thing he had ever done. As the years went by, Alan began to talk more about what it was really like to work on MASH. He talked about the stresses of being the star of a popular show, how hard it was to work with some of his co-stars, and how hard it was to come up with new ideas for 11 years of the show. He also talked about how the show had made his life better. He was just another actor trying to make it in Hollywood before MASH. He was a star because of the show, and he used it to talk about things he cared about, like peace, social justice, and how important it is to be kind and respectful to others. Alan Alda shocked his friends in 2018 when he told them he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He had been living with the illness for 3 years before he told everyone about it. A lot of people were shocked by the news because Alan had always seemed happy and healthy. Alda talked about his experience with polio as a child and how acting out his dreams helped him understand he had Parkinson's. He also talked about how staying active has helped him deal with his diagnosis. Alan found out he had Parkinson's in a strange way. He was having very detailed dreams in which he would act out what was happening. Arlene, his wife, saw that he was moving around a lot while he slept and would sometimes even punch or try to run. Alan chose to get checked out after reading that this could be an early sign of Parkinson's. Even though the news was scary, Alan chose to deal with it directly. To control his symptoms, he started to work out more, eat better, and see doctors. He also chose to be open about his illness, thinking that being honest would help other people who were going through the same thing. Alan has found it hard to live with Parkinson's. He used to be able to do simple things like tie his shoes or write his name without thinking about them. Now, they are hard for him. But he has dealt with this problem the same smart, funny, and determined way he has dealt with everything else in his life. Alan now works to raise awareness and fund studies for Parkinson's disease. And he has worked to raise money for research into better treatments and hopefully a cure. He has been open about his illness in conversations. He wants people to know that having Parkinson's doesn't mean you're done with life. As Alan deals with this serious illness, he still finds time to think about his work and share new insights about his time on MASH. Recent discoveries and thoughts. Alan has been on a number of MASH reunion specials and talks in the past few years, where he has talked about his time on the show in new ways. To give Alan, her longtime friend and Parkinson's patient, a report in April 2024, Joy Behar said that they still go out to dinner every night. Alan is still smart and funny at 89 years old. When he can, he still works, and he's still happy to talk about MASH with friends and reporters. He has been more open than ever in recent talks about how hard it is to make the show and work with his co-stars. Alan's talk about how much he learned about being a leader on MASH is one of the most interesting things he's said. Because he was the star of the show, he had to learn how to get along with people who had different minds and faces. Some of his co-stars were simple to work with, and others were tougher. He had to learn how to be firm and how to be loose. He has also said that the show changed the way he thinks about war and strife. The story of MASH took place during the Vietnam War, which was also going on at the time the show was made. Alan and the other people who worked on the show wanted to say something important about how much war costs and how important life is. Mike Farrell, an actor and Marine Corps veteran, was asked by Alda to read the scene with him for the show. This was the first time in 40 years that the two guys had worked together as their famous characters. One of the most touching things to happen recently is that Alan and Mike Farrell are still friends. Recently, the two guys worked on a project together and acted out a new MASH scene that was written by AI. They played their parts for the show for the first time in more than 40 years. It showed that they are still close friends and love the show. In the same way, Alan has been open about his mistakes. Some of his co-stars, especially Gary Berghoff, make him wish he had been more patient with them. Right now he knows that Gary had personal issues that made it tough for him to do his job. Because he was so angry, Alan wished he had been more understanding and helpful. These thoughts show how much Alan has changed and grown since his time on MASH. They also show the knowledge that comes with getting older and having more life experience. Alan Alda knows that when people think of his work, they will first remember him as Hawkeye Pierce. It might be annoying for some actors to be so closely linked to one role, but Alan has always loved it. He's happy for Hawkeye and happy for MASH having done well. Hawkeye Pierce was a unique figure because he was both funny and had strong morals. Not only was he funny, but he also really cared about what was right.
He fought for what he thought was right, even if it was hard or not what most people thought. These are traits that Alda's most famous role has in common with him. MASH was more than just a fun show. War, friendship, dedication, and what it means to be a good person were all things that the show made people think about. A Peabody Award for Excellence in Broadcasting and several Emmy Awards were among the many awards the show won. For the last time, on February 28, 1983, over 105 million people watched the last show of MASH. That night, more people watched that TV show than any other in American history. That record stood for many years. The characters said goodbye to each other, and to the war that had brought them together in this funny and sad episode. Alan said that going through the role of Hawkeye Pierce taught him a lot about life and himself. Alan's behavior outside of acting was affected by the character's desire to help others and do what's right. He used his fame to get more active in politics and social issues, and try to make the world a better place. The things Alan learned from playing Hawkeye have also helped him deal with being told he has Parkinson's. Like his character, Alan has dealt with this problem with bravery, humor, and a strong will. He has refused to let his illness define who he is or what he can do. It becomes clearer and more important what Alan left behind as he ages and faces health problems. What it's really like to work with Alda. After decades of talk and guesswork, most fans didn't know how complicated it really was to work with Alda on the MASH set. Yes, he could be bossy and demanding at times. Even though some of his co-stars found it hard to work with him, he really wanted to make the best show possible and treat serious topics with the respect they earned. Some group members who got along with Alan say he was smart, funny, and really dedicated to his job. He always showed up on time, followed the rules, and was happy to help other players do their best work. He always wanted everyone to do better, which made things tense at times but made for better TV. People on the group who had problems with Alan often had trouble with how hard he tried to be perfect and how strongly he believed in how things should be done. Some people thought he was too bossy and didn't care about what other people thought. Some people didn't like how he became the clear star of the show when it was meant to be an ensemble piece. Most likely, the truth is somewhere in the middle. Alda was a person just like everyone else. He had good and bad points. It was hard for him to balance his job as an actor with his growing duties as a writer, director, and, well, show boss. That being said, he didn't always do a good job with these problems. It's clear that Alan really cared about MASH and everyone who worked on it. Most of the time he fought with his co-stars because he wanted the show to be the best it could be. He knew that the show could change the way people thought about important problems because millions of people watched it. The people who worked with Alan on MASH remember him as passionate, smart, and dedicated to doing a great job. He tried his best every time, but it wasn't always easy to work with him. And that was the most important thing in the end. Alda's honest comments about his time on MASH show us a side of TV fame that we don't see very often. There is a side where real people are having real problems behind all the laughing and cheers. People love his story because it shows how hard it is to carry the weight of a popular show while also trying to stay human and keep ties with other people. It makes us wonder how much of themselves actors can really keep up when they are under the constant pressure of network TV and the expectations of millions of fans. There were more going on the MASH set than just artistic differences or personality clashes. They were about the basic problem of finding a balance between one's own artistic vision and working together to tell a story. Alan's growing impact on the show had an effect on every part of production, from decisions about the script to how the group worked together. Some people, like Mike Farrell, welcomed this change. He saw in Alan an artistic partner and a friend. Other performers, including Gary Burhoff, the late Wayne Rogers, and Milan Stevenson, felt overshadowed or undervalued in what was meant to be a group piece. The most interesting thing about Alan's thoughts is that he is willing to admit his flaws and the mistakes he made along the way. Being sorry that he wasn't more understanding with Gary Burhoff when he was going through personal problems shows a level of self-awareness and growth that is new in a field where ego and self-justification are common. Like how getting older makes you more mature and how being seriously ill can change your view on things. It's clear that being diagnosed with Parkinson's has changed the way he thinks about his past interactions and decisions. Being the face of a show that was so important to culture must have been a lot of stress. During one of America's most troubled times, MASH was a commentary on war, morals, and the human condition. Alan knew he had to take on this duty and did so, but making that promise cost something. Even though his discipline and strong belief served the show's larger purpose, they sometimes turned off people who just wanted to do their jobs without worrying about how they looked. Even with all the stress and disagreements, real connections could be made, as shown by the lasting bonds that formed through MASH, especially with Mike Farrell. Their recent performance of new MASH dialogue together after 40 years apart suggests that the bonds they made in that made-up Korean War hospital were stronger than the problems that existed during the production years. In times like these, the connections that can weather work problems and come out stronger are the ones that mean the most. Alan's choice to be open about having Parkinson's disease shows the same honesty and openness he brings to his thoughts on MASH. Hawkeye Hawkeye Pierce never avoided talking about war and morals, and Alan Alda does the same. He doesn't run away from the truths of getting older and being sick. As he did during his MASH years, he's still using his fame to talk about important problems. For example, he speaks out for Parkinson's research and is honest about living with the disease. These new facts paint a picture of an artist who may have been too serious, too dedicated, and too aware of his impact for his own good, or for the comfort of those around him. But it's also a picture of someone who knew TV could be more than just pleasure. It could be a way to think about things and make comments about society. Alan Alda has been alive long enough to see fans of MASH from different generations enjoy his work. We have a better idea of what it was really like to make one of TV's best shows thanks to his honest thoughts on the problems and disagreements that happened on set. Even though there were problems and tensions, MASH is still a great TV show, and Alan Alda's acting as Hawkeye Pierce continues to entertain and inspire people all over the world. Do you think that his strict method was worth it because of how powerful and good the show was in the end? Do you think there was a better way to make art that does the same thing? Leave your thoughts in the box below.